first started it, you and your original 5-man crew, how far east did you guys go? As far as territory, from Western, you go to Normandy, to Vermont, to Hoover. I mean, where'd you guys stop?
We went all the way down to Vermont.
Vermont. Who had 83rd on their handle first, the Gangster Crips or the Hoovers?
Kev Mac video, you know this is for sure. Kev Mac video, open your soul, represent your ghetto, baby.
We all was a trade at about the same time, because we lined up. All that came out about O'Neal Brown in hood. They didn't just start off 111. They started off neighborhood. Rolling 60s just didn't start off rolling 60s. They started off neighborhood. Then later on, Face and them turned rolling 60s, just like Gangster Crip. It started off Gangster Crip. Then it went to 83rd when they seen, hey, we all off 83rd, this us, and that's how 83rd Gangster come about.
Tell me if this is true or not. I don't know. I heard this. I heard you guys put 83rd onto the Gangster Crip because you guys hung at the Jack in the Box on 83rd and Western.
We all stayed up and down 83rd.
So Jack in the Box has nothing to do with it?
Nothing to do with it at all. No, Jack in the Box.
Was that one of y'all hangouts though?
Yeah, it was a hangout for us. It was a hangout for all type of dudes, but later on it started being a hangout, no more different than White Mountain. See, so none of this shit is new. If you've really been in this game and really moving around, then you had Lucy in the hundreds. That's on Imperial. See, most of them ain't went like that. I don't bang with the best of them, where they don't mad at, pull the trigger, did the robberies, all that shit. So I'm a little bit different when you're speaking to me. I've been to Lucy's. I've been in the hundreds. I still go into the hundreds. And it's difficult, our era, to where we get ostracized because the last 40 years, most of everybody that's involved, they Crip on Crip. We don't know nothing about that shit. We come in united, one for one, all for one. Most of these motherfuckers ain't went through the trials and tribulations we had to go through in the penitentiary. Y'all ain't fought that fight against the BGF. You might have later on, but you didn't go in there when we went, when we didn't know nothing. Hell, we only 18 years old. We don't know nothing about no goddamn BGF, Mexican Mafia, and brotherhoods, police, civil rights. We just little kids. But now we in the big leagues with the guns. We paid a lot of dues in this shit, man. To be trying to test somebody, I wouldn't recommend it, I promise you.
Let me ask you this just for the record, because there's always these little debates as far as who's the first neighborhood Crip and who put Gangster Crip at the end of their name first. When you came up with the term Gangster Crip, were there any other Gangster Crips floating around at the time?
There wasn't no gangster. When me and Frog and us came, there was no Gangster Crips ever been said before. I'm the first one to ever say it. And if you asked any of them, see, don't let somebody say what they did. I ask the other ones who were there. They gonna tell you who was who and who was there. Because a lot of times on these shows, these dudes will say things and go unabated to where there'll be no discrepancies, no questions asked because they're at the mic by themselves. But then when you put them on there, you'll find out who was there because they're going to be there.
All right, let's fast forward to Melvin Farmer, Gangster Crip. Somewhere in this process, you land on 10th Avenue and 63rd. What year is that and what was that about?
That come up about 73. I don't move from over there to where I'm on the dime, is what they call it. This is when the dime was started. I move over there 6329, 10th Avenue, and I introducing them dudes to the A-Trades. That's how they end up mingling. Rayford end up messing with Rona, and we mingling. I got a baby from Baker T down the street, his sisters and them. We on 3711. Pinky that got killed, Billy, what's my boy standing up and over here? His cat, Kevin Doucette, his little brother, Chaos, and his mother. I know they family. Skull that end up dying early in the game. So I move over there on 10th Avenue, and my spot is where everybody congregating at.
Was Babyface living on 10th Avenue at that time?
They was on 11th Avenue later on.
Okay.
They was on 11th Avenue. Rip was on Southwest and Madden. Lil Keystone, they was on Southwest. Bowden, Nim was down there. Champ, Nim, Curtis, Ed Catchett, Bayard, Sunshine, Rick, Newhouse. Everybody was over there. Singleton. What was his name? He used to go with one-eyed net. Tyrone Singleton, Mumpy, the Hills, Black Dog. They caught the shooting on Brian Hurst with Niecy. Was staying over the tire place over on West Boulevard.
You know, Black Dog was a shoreline dog.
Yeah, but Black Dog caught a shooting over there with the police. He was going with Niecy over there back then.
So let me ask you something. When you move on 10th Avenue in 1973, the actual set, Rolling 60s, wasn't really in its stages yet. It was a whole bunch of different things going on around there before the actual Rolling 60s set consolidated the area. Do you know anything about the little history prior to
When I moved over there, you had the neighborhood and you had Bishops, West Side Bishops. Lucky was over there at that time on 10th Avenue, right up the street from me. So you had a group of Bishops, because over there at that time also you had Kincaid that was staying on the other side of the school, up in the avenue, Second Avenue. Those were original Crips, all up in there. Raymond Potts was on the other side, Odie and all them. And then you had some of them that were claiming West Side Bishops, because I had never heard of them. I heard of the East Side. And in fact, me and Lucky got into a confrontation behind, I need to know where you from. And he told me he was from Bishops. And I asked him, I don't hear Crip on the end of that. So you telling me you like Space Ghost? You're East Side Bishops like them? That's exactly how that conversation went. And he said, yeah. And I told him, well, don't be here tomorrow. And we met up tomorrow, the next day, and got into it.
So this sounds like your Crenshaw High School days when you was on 10th Avenue.
Yeah, this before I had shot at the principal.
So basically, back then, that was pretty much a no man's land. It was still going through a stage of being defined and consolidated, right? Neighborhood Crips, West Side Bishops.
No, we off in the sets, but all the time, if you wasn't saying you was a Crip, you couldn't have been nothing else but a adversary, cause you ain't got Crip on. So it's starting to expand. Van Ayers boys, Inglewood family, Swans, Acton Park boys. You don't hear none of that with the end of it saying Crip. So when we met and we asked him where you from, if we not hearing it started off, oh, I'm an East Side Crip, or I'm a West Side Crip, oh, I'm from Compton Crip. Those would be the answers. Then later on, starting in the end of 72, oh, where you from? Oh, I'm from A-Trey Gangster. Oh, I'm from in Hood. I'm from the 30s. I'm from Harlem. Then the language started getting into that. But it always had identification where you knew, because the end of the word had Crip on it.
So, a few questions. When you were on 10th Avenue, at that stage, were you just a Gangster Crip, or were you an A-Trey Gangster Crip?
We A-Trey Gangster Crip now.
Is it safe to say, because when you speak to older 60s, and you ask them about the early relationships between the 60s and the A-Trays, your name is always number one or number two that comes up in that roll call of A-Trays. Is it safe to say that you were the glue between the 60s and the A-Trays back then? You were the ones making those relationships happen?
Yeah, they knew me from way before then. They met most of them through me, to where the Hoovers too. Because I knew all of them from going to juvenile hall or growing up over there and staying with them, and from Horace Mann. So I knew all of them, and a lot of them met each other through me, to where they got to formalizing and getting together prior to back then, 72, 73. I introduced a lot of them to each other.
What brought you guys together? What was the common link? What did you guys all have in common that made you guys run together? What was the activity that bonded?
You mean
that
the
bonded you
60s
guys?
and the A-Trays?
You and
Or just overall with me generally across the board?
both. What bonded you with these guys? What was your?
Well, mainly because we put in work together. We have a lot of secrets together. We have things that could get each other's life. One thing about all of us together, we were together where at one time or another we protected each other's backs in our life to where most guys can't say that. Everybody from back then, whether it be Barefoot, Pookie, be Perry Manuel, we all could tell stories of where we've had to have each other back either in prison or on the streets or in gang fights. So we had that unity and trust. And now with the 60s and the A-Trays, that wasn't too hard for them to get along because they mostly come from Horace Mann. So they kind of knew each other, but now as far as them and knowing them in the hundreds, that was a different thing for those from A-Tray that come a little later because they ain't sowed their oats with these boys. So now that's when a little friction happened with them getting into it. The ones that come a little generation down because they hadn't sowed their oats with them as opposed to when I had did it in 71, 72. They coming in 73 now. And so they have to work their way in also to get their name and their reputations up. So it's caused a little conflict right there.
Did you have a relationship with Big Rick?
Yeah, I had a relationship with Big Rick and Tyrone. I raised him. And me and Big Rick, we tied to the hip on a few things that don't happen. Not just with him, but mostly most of the people that you're naming or about naming, we danced together one way or the other, whether pulling that trigger, getting some money, doing something criminal. But it usually has something to do with us protecting each other back more so than anything. Yes, I knew Big Rick all my life.
I'm gonna get back to Big Rick. I want to rewind a few years back. I asked you this before. What can you tell us about the Long Table?
The Long Table was the first gang intervention program around 1977. You had 2 members from each set, $50 a week, 2 hours, twice a week. But you only could pick 2 members. So at this time it was me and Rayford, but you might have other ones. You got Bulldog, you got Sugar Bear, you got Puddin', you got Tam. And it was Rosie Greer's idea to start an intervention program to address inner city violence, Crips and Bloods, and particularly black on black.
Who's Rosie Greer?
The football player from the Fearsome Foursome. In fact, he's the one that took the gun from Sirhan that killed Kennedy.
Really?
At the Ambassador Hotel. That's what he's more famously known for, is taking the gun out of Sirhan when he killed Kennedy. So when he started this program, it was kind of a famous and a big program with Ruth Washington, the Sentinel newspaper. They helped it. And a murder happened to where a young man that was part of the program, I would just say a blood, was somewhere, some along the line, the program folks had member folks that had killed him. After the funeral, they came and a big fight occurred there. A shootout occurred, and that's what closed the Long Table down. In fact, Cuse went to jail for getting caught with a shotgun. Me and Babyface ran and got away. Then they started seeing it. It was the first trial where you had it where they used metal detectors and stuff to look for weapons. This was one of the first trials ever to be held like that for gang members, where they was during the court.
Who was the main game coordinator at the long table?
You had, as far as passing out the money, you had Bulldog, Sugar Bear. I don't know if Big Bam was there or not, but I know Bulldog, Sugar Bear, and we all line up and we'll pass out. You get the $50 in cash. Babyface was there, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Bulldog. His name is kind of notorious in the Crip history circles. What can you tell me about Bulldog's history and his personality?
Oh, Bulldog was a beast. We done did quite a few things together, particularly when it came to getting money, robbing, and violence. Back in the day, he had caught a case, I believe, up at Washington High, where he did something, folklore. I don't have to speak on it. If you understand it and know, you know what it is. And that was my partner, man. Benny Simpson was his name. And then I used to be his cellie, because he wouldn't let nobody. You couldn't just cellie up with Benny. He'd tell, yeah, he'd go on single still. He was a good guy, a violent guy. Died later on in life, I think of natural causes. He didn't get killed or nothing. And he was a good comrade, man.
I think they even buried him out of town, too, in another state.
Yeah, that was my partner right there. Good cat, good comrade.
Where was Bulldog from when you first met him?
East Side. Then they went from East Side. Then I think they was all from A-Tray, Hoover, Smiley. Or they was from Hoover. They ended up being around. Bulldog and them claiming Hoover, Bam, and all them.
Explain that, because that's kind of confusing, because you kind of link East Side Crips as going East Side sets, East Coast kitchen. What made Bulldog and a lot of these original East Side Crips join or help form the Hoovers? Can you explain that?
Well, they were close too. You know, Hoover's right on the borderline between the East Side. Tony Stacy, they all went to Bethune, Bret Hart. They right on the borderline of the East and West. So a lot of them would join and end up being Hoovers. Most of the Hoovers are from the East Side. Most of the Hoover Crips, unless you get up into the hundreds, that most of them coming down 7-4, 8-Tray, 9 Deuce, they're more toward Bethune, Bret Hart, end up going to Fremont on that side of town. You had the Kitchen Crips and other ones from that East Coast. As you notice, East Coast, the East Side doesn't have as many names and terms for gangs as they do on the West Side. On the West Side, it's every 10 blocks. From 1st Street up to 220th, you got a set every 10 blocks, north, south, east, or west. But as opposed to on the West Side, you got the Kitchen Crips, Main Street, East Coast, Pueblo Bishops. But you know, you more like got East Coast, where they're locked in as East Coast sets, 7, what is it, 6, 9, Duck, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to the West Side, where you got a different terrain every 10 blocks. So having the Hoovers, they were right in the middle, West Side, East Side, but the majority of them come from off the East Side.
Let me ask you something. Your childhood partners at Bret Hart, did all those kids end up turning Hoover?
Well, let me see who went Hoover. Ricky Bonneville. I don't know what Ricky ended up being. He was in so much shit. Ricky Bonneville was over there. But now, like Tony Stacy, Battle, Gooseby, Pup, Philip Baines, Joe Stanley, Hoover Joe, Heron, Red, the Ransoms, Daryl Ransom, Michael Steele, Red. You had a lot of them. Cartoon, Duck, a lot of them from Bret Hart. Most of them end up being like Walnuts. Not a lot of them end up being from Hoover, from Bret Hart, but most of them come from Bethune during that time, end up being Hoovers, more so as opposed to down on that end. When you go up into the hundreds, that's when there'll be the Hoovers will be more from the west side of town as opposed to the east side. But one thing I will say, at the end of the day, mostly everybody that started off on the west side, their roots are from the east side because they just migrated over. So everybody has a touch of the west side or the east side, because you got to remember, that used to be the showcase for the entertainers on Central. That was the place to go. Now starting in the 70s, the west side was taken over as far as the place to go. Soul Train, gang banging, and pop locking, the Forum. So now the glitter and the glamour is starting to be replaced on the west side.
Okay, I want to tap into the year 1979, but since you're talking about Soul Train and pop locking and all that, who started the Crip Walk, Melvin?
Well, I won't say who started it, but I guarantee you who was the best at that time was me. And it's simple things. People put a spin on it. They had dances even before the Crip Walk that we were doing that signified we was Crips, way before the Crip Walk. But if you read Michael Conception book or Axe O'Neal or any of them from back then, you had come me and Hot Dog. That's my dancing partner. Because it's like kid and play back then. You got the Soul Train dancers, they dancing in couple. You got the pop lockers, Fred Berry, Rerun, Jamita Joe, they dancing in. So it's quite natural. If we want to win that $50, that $100 dance contest, we got to create us a dance. And that was the Crip Walk. But as far as being the best at it, I was one of the best. Then you had Tamika and Dancing Sam. You had couples, the East Side, Jackie Todd, Pam Todd, Stacy Kelly. You had Glue Baby. You had guys that could Crip Walk, and at that time, nobody beat me Crip walking. Nobody.
So who's this Sugar Bear guy we always hear about who created the Sea Walk?
Nah, that's later on when they hopping and dancing around and they hopping and doing it. But if you think the Crip Walk been out since 1973 somewhere, positive of that. Read Michael Conception book. We used to go against the Soul Train dancers, and it's simple things that people try to create history and make it bigger than what it seemed. And it was simple things. The Crip Walk. We didn't know that nobody was going to be doing that dance because we started off doing that with canes. That's how we had a cane and you walk back and forth. That's how the Crip Walk started. Then we danced to the side, and we be trying to win that dance contest. You got Jamita Joe Freeman, all the Soul Train dancers, they clapping. Then you got Fred Berry, the pop lockers. These are the ones, the real ones that you're seeing on these shows. So we going up dancing against them because we juvenile. So you could win $50 or $100. We had to create a dance. We sure couldn't be gang banging and pop locking doing all this kind of stuff. It ain't gonna look right.
So a lot of the guys that we see on Soul Train back in the days, there's a sprinkle of Crips all in that audience, or I mean on the dance stage?
Not on the dance stage, because they was filming that, but we'll be together at, say, like the Hollywood, the Hilton Hotel, the Consolidated Plaza, Blueberry Hill, the Workshop, the Red Onion. These are the type of places where juveniles, 17, now we 16, 17, 18, we're not old enough to go to the clubs, the after hours where they got alcohol. So the Soul Train dancers, the majority of them, they were in high school too when they first come. They wasn't having college kids, so we all creating a culture to where we'll be at the parties with them, at the hotels or something, and they be them renting them out, and they'll give you $50 as the dance. So no, we wouldn't be on Soul Train. We'll be at the clubs and the dances with them.
Did you know Keith was on there?
Yeah, I remember when you told me Cutes was on there. Mouse, Gary, what's his name?
Gary Lane.
No, not Gary Lane. He used to be with Shalimar. Jeffrey Daniels. when they made Shalimar, Jeffrey Daniels, he grew up on the 60s. In the 60s, he stayed right behind Slauson and Crenshaw, which a lot of people didn't know. Fred Berry, he was off the east side, but he started hanging around over there. Rollo, or whatever his name, in Sanford and Son, his daughters was going to Crenshaw. You had Jamita Joe Freeman, that was in Crooklyn at the end. She's voted the #1 Soul Train dancer. You had Jody Watley, Howard Hewitt. These were the original members of Shalimar. All those people come off Soul Train. A lot of people come off that Soul Train era.
I want to switch reels real quick. We can edit this out because I noticed when I asked you about certain names, you didn't mention his name, so I don't know if you want to mention him. Philip McCain?
Mm-hmm.
Is that no place for you?
No, I can go, but that's my boy.
Okay.
That's my boy there.
What can you tell me about Philip McCain and his relationship to Venice?
When I have been running around with Philip since about 69, 70, so I was about 13 and 14. In fact, Philip is one of the main ones that introduced me to Crippin', one of the ones among many that laced me into the game. And when I met Batman, which is his cousin, I met him in Venice, where we went to Venice. This was back in like 1971.
Wait a minute, you talking about the East Side Batman?
Mm-hmm.
That's Philip's cousin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Batman is Philip McCain's and Perry's cousin. So I met Batman in Venice with Philip. At that time, you had Duncan, a brother named Duncan that ended up getting killed in a jewelry store robbery. You had a young man named Banks, Ron Banks, that stayed out there. You had a Nettles family where he was playing with the New York Yankees. Craig Nettles and his family, Gary Nettles, that's Breeze near him out the 100. You had Ducci, you had Vaughn, and his brother used to play for UCLA, Hatchett, that used to play Montel Hatchett or something. That's Vaughn's brother. So Philip and his history that I know of go back into 1971. Then about in 72, 73, Philip got paralyzed, where he got shot by the police with me, to where we had got into a altercation to where shots was fired, guns was thrown, and the police ended up shooting Philip and paralyzing him in the back. And I had to run and go through Inglewood to tell his family that I think Philip been shot, but I knew he had been shot. So I was with him the night he got shot by the police and paralyzed.
So is it safe to say that Venice was Crippin' early?
Yeah, they had Crips over there. Yeah, Venice was Crippin'. All the West Side had Crips before individual names. See, we getting it mixed. Oh, who was first and who? All the West Side, Venice, that's Forest's stretch, not Santa Monica. Venice been around Crippin'. They had dudes that were West Side Crips that were over there. Then they end up Venice Shoreline. But when I was going out there, they were Venice Crips, but they was also part of West Side Crips. Now they elevated. So this is 71.
Man, you tied Batman to Philip McCain, so my brain goes to was Batman Philip's Crip influence, and did Batman have any kind of Crip influence on Venice since he had family and cousins there? Because Batman's an early East Side Crip.